The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, spilling warmth across the framed photos on Maya's living room wall, moments frozen in time. One showed her son, Rohan, as a child, clutching her hand at a park. Another, his wedding day, where she had smiled through tears of joy. Those photographs had been her only true company since her husband passed away 8 years ago. When Rohan called that morning, Maya's heart fluttered like it used to when he was a boy. "Amma," he began cheerfully, "we're planning a family trip to the hills next weekend. The kids are so excited." Her face lit up instantly. A family trip she hadn't traveled in years. She pictured herself walking along misty paths, holding her grandchildren's little hands, listening to their laughter. "That sounds wonderful, Beta," she replied, her voice trembling with hope. "I'll start packing." There was a pause. A small, uneasy silence that stretched longer than it should have. Then Annika's voice, cool and sharp, came through the speaker. "Oh, Maya, about that. We actually booked a villa and it only has 4 rooms. There just isn't enough space." Maya froze. "Not enough space," she repeated softly. Annika's tone was polite but firm. "Yes, you understand, right? We already have the kids, my parents, and Rohan and I. It would be too crowded. Next time, maybe." Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. She heard her son murmur something in the background, a weak, uncertain "sorry, Amma. It's just for a few days," before the line went silent. The sound of the call ending was deafening. She sat still for a long time, staring at the phone in her trembling hands. The excitement that had just bloomed inside her wilted into a heavy ache. She whispered to the empty room, "There was always space for you in my heart, my child, always." That night she cooked dinner as usual, 1 extra plate placed out of habit. She imagined Rohan laughing, the grandchildren talking about their trip, Annika smiling beside her parents. She swallowed her pain with each bite of the meal she couldn't finish. When the day of the trip arrived, she stood by the window and watched as their car pulled away, luggage piled high on the roof. Her grandchildren waved at her through the backseat window, their little hands pressed to the glass. Rohan looked up once, just once, before driving away. Maya stayed at the window long after the car disappeared. The house grew silent and her chest felt hollow. For years she had lived for others, her husband, her son, her family. But as the echoes of their laughter faded, she realized something. No one had saved any space for her. And yet, deep in her heart, a quiet voice whispered, "Maybe it's time to make space for myself." That night, beneath the silence, a seed of strength began to grow, the kind that only a broken heart can nurture. The days that followed were painfully quiet. The ticking of the clock, the creak of the ceiling fan, and the echo of her own footsteps were now the only sounds that filled Maya's home. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, folding laundry that no one wore and preparing meals that no one shared. The silence was not peaceful, it was sharp, cutting through her thoughts, reminding her of what she had lost. She sat by the window each evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, wondering if her family thought of her, even for a moment. But deep down, she already knew the answer. They were busy, surrounded by laughter and the warmth of togetherness, while she sat alone, the forgotten mother who had given everything. On the 3rd night, unable to sleep, Maya opened an old wooden chest she hadn't touched in years. Inside lay her late husband's notebooks, filled with sketches and dreams they once shared. Her fingers trembled as she turned the yellowed pages. One drawing caught her eye, a simple sketch of a small resort by a lake, surrounded by trees. Beneath it, her husband had written in his neat handwriting, "A place where every soul finds peace." Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the faded lines. "We were supposed to build this together," she whispered. She remembered those evenings long ago when they'd talk for hours about creating a retreat, a sanctuary for weary hearts. But after his death, that dream had faded under the weight of survival and motherhood. Now, looking at that sketch, Maya felt something shift inside her. The ache of rejection was still there, but it began to twist into something else, a quiet determination. Maybe it's not too late. She took out a candle and placed it beside the sketch. The flame flickered, its soft light reflecting in her teary eyes. For the first time in weeks, a sense of purpose warmed her chest. She made tea and stayed up all night, reading through her husband's plans, his notes about land, designs, even ideas for the name Aranya Haven, meaning a peaceful forest. The next morning, Maya walked to the small piece of land she and her husband had bought years ago, a forgotten patch near a lake, overgrown with wild grass. The air was crisp, the sound of birds filled the silence, and the breeze carried the scent of earth and new beginnings. Standing there, barefoot on the soil, she whispered, "If no one has space for me, I will create my own." Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't. The loneliness she once feared became her strength. That day, Maya called an old friend, an architect who had known her husband, and asked for help. It was the first step of something new, something hers. She didn't know how long it would take or what it would become, but she finally had a reason to wake up again. And as she walked home under the golden sky, for the first time in a long while, Maya smiled, not because her heart no longer hurt, but because she had chosen to rise from the ache. Months passed, and the once forgotten land near the lake began to transform. What was once tangled with weeds and silence now echoed with the rhythm of hammers, the hum of saws, and Maya's calm, steady voice directing it all. She visited the site every day, her dupe tied tightly around her head, her hands covered in dust. The workers were surprised by her determination. "Madame, you should rest." They would tell her, but Maya only smiled. "I rested long enough while the world moved on without me. Every nail hammered into wood, every stone laid into place, became a piece of her healing." The resort took shape slowly, a cluster of cozy cottages overlooking the lake, surrounded by wildflowers and tall, whispering trees. She named it Aranya Haven, just like her husband had dreamed, a place where every heart, lost or weary, could find peace. In the evenings, after the workers left, Maya would sit by the unfinished deck with a cup of tea, watching the sunset spill gold across the water. She'd close her eyes and whisper to the wind, "We did it, my love, you'd be proud." It wasn't easy. There were days when exhaustion and doubt nearly broke her, days when the loneliness crept back in, whispering cruelly that no one cared. But then she'd remember Annika's words, "There isn't enough space," and it would light a small fire in her chest. Each time she felt weak, she built something new, a bench by the water, a lantern-lit path, a garden blooming with white jasmine. By the time Aranya Haven opened its doors, a quiet beauty surrounded the place. Guests came seeking escape from the chaos of their lives and found solace in its serenity. Word spread quickly, and soon Maya's haven became known as a sanctuary for broken souls. Ironically, around that same time, Rohan and Annika's lives began to unravel. Their boutique business, once thriving, suffered heavy losses. Arguments grew frequent. Rohan was burdened with debt, while Annika complained about how nothing ever went right anymore. Maya never gloated when she heard whispers from neighbors. She simply went about her day, tending to her garden, hosting guests, and living with a quiet grace that came from peace earned through pain. Then, one afternoon, fate delivered its twist. Maya was sitting in her small office, reviewing bookings for the upcoming holiday week, when her manager walked in with a smile. "Madame, we're fully booked again. Oh, and one last. Minute family has requested a long stay. They said they're desperate to get away from the city stress." Maya glanced at the form. Her heart paused. The names read Rohan Sharma and Annika Sharma. For a long moment she stared at the paper, her breath caught between disbelief and fate's strange humor. The woman who had told her there wasn't enough space was now seeking her space. Maya leaned back in her chair, a small, bittersweet smile curving her lips. "Confirm the booking," she said softly. And as the sunlight poured through the window, glinting off the photo of her late husband on the desk, Maya whispered, "Looks like the universe always finds balance." The morning the guests were due to arrive. Aranya Haven looked like something out of a dream. The air carried the scent of jasmine and wet soil after a light rain. Maya stood near the entrance, her silver hair tied neatly, her eyes calm yet filled with quiet anticipation. She wasn't nervous, not anymore. Time had hardened her pain into wisdom, and now she only wanted peace. When the car pulled into the driveway, she recognized it instantly, Rohan's old SUV, now dusty and dented. The doors opened and out stepped Annika, dressed simply, her face marked by exhaustion rather than pride. The children followed, quieter than she remembered, and then came Rohan, her son, once her pride, now visibly weighed down by worry. He looked up and froze. "Amma." His voice cracked like a boy's again. You own this place." Maya smiled gently, her hands folded before her. "Welcome to Aranya Haven," she said, "where every heart finds space." The words hung in the air like a delicate blade. Annika's eyes widened, shame flickering across her face. The very words she had once used to exclude now returned, polished into a gentle truth. Maya's staff carried their luggage inside while she led them through the resort, the cottages, the gardens, the deck overlooking the lake. The children ran ahead, laughing, while Rohan followed silently. Everything around them radiated warmth, the home, the care, the love that Maya had poured into every corner of this place. As evening fell, they all sat by the bonfire. The soft crackle of flames filled the silence between them. Finally, Rohan spoke, his eyes glistening. "Amma, I didn't know. We didn't realize how much we hurt you." Maya looked at him steadily. "You didn't have to realize, Rohan. Love doesn't need grand gestures, only a little space." Annika lowered her gaze, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was selfish. I thought the world revolved around comfort and luxury. I forgot what real warmth feels like." Maya's expression softened. "Sometimes the only way people learn value is through loss." For a long time, no one spoke. The night grew quiet except for the sound of the lake and the whisper of the wind. Maya looked at her grandchildren, their innocent laughter breaking the stillness, and her heart melted. She reached out, touching Rohan's hand. "Forgiveness isn't for you," she said softly. "It's for me, because I refuse to carry bitterness any longer." Tears streamed down Rohan's face as he held her hand tightly, his voice trembling. "You always made room for me, Amma, even when I didn't deserve it." Maya smiled faintly. "A mother's heart always has space, but now so does mine for myself." Later that night, as everyone slept in the cozy cottages, Maya sat by the lake under the stars. The water shimmered, reflecting the lanterns she had lit in memory of her husband. She whispered into the quiet, "We built this dream together, my love, not for them, but for me, for peace." Behind her, the faint sound of her family's laughter drifted from the cottages, softer this time, humble, human. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the night embrace her. Her revenge had never been cruel. It was the kind that healed through grace, the kind that made even the guilty weep, not from punishment, but from understanding. Because in the end, her sweetest victory wasn't wealth or pride. It was finally knowing her worth. And for the first time in years, Maya felt truly at home, in a world where there would always be enough space for her.